the future. An ecological disaster has forced the human race to seek shelter underground, where they must dress like man-sized condoms and walk around purposefully doing vaguely space-related things. A marauding villain bent on conquest attacks the Earth, this struggle being conveyed mainly by showing Earthlings staring at screens and describing what's going on in a take my word for it tone of voice. Fearing the worst, the Admiral of the Earth Space Command decides to summon the help of a small gang of elite crime fighters who don't play by the rules. Among them, Hollywood, skilled pilot and legend in his own mind, Dirk Laramie, who is as intrepid in reality as Hollywood is in his imagination, down-to-earth Irene, who does most of the work to assemble the gang, Bridget, whose profession as a nuclear scientist doesn't stop her from taking fashion tips from Barbarella, and Norman, the best boxer ever, who specializes in taking on robot opponents. Norman drafts two other soldiers for their army, a pair of insufferably love-struck robots, Tilt and Tilly. Both have R2-D2 type abilities, and in addition, Tilt can vibrate his molecules so that objects pass right through him. By the time all these characters are introduced, the movie's nearly half over, so there's not a whole lot of time left for their battle with the evil Lord Tess. Tess's warships run on a MacGuffin-esque wonder substance called Enderium, whose properties aren't ever really disclosed. Bridget, a scientific mastermind, Professor Maury, and the rest research their brains out to come up with a wonder product capable of neutralizing Enderium. They think out of the box and dub this anti-Enderium. Our heroes convene at an ecological research lab run by Maury, where Tess and his minions kidnap Irene. The good guys travel to Tess's rather modest starship to rescue her, and to try and thwart Tess's plan to enslave the Earth and sell it at a kind of perpetual auction, where worlds are bought and sold by the galaxy's super wealthy elite. Sometimes a movie has to be seen to be believed. Last in a trilogy of spaghetti space operas meant to cash in on the tremendous success of Star Wars, Star Odyssey is a particularly sketchy marriage of what seems to be children's entertainment with the cheesecake typical of softcore sex comedies. Director Alfonso Brescia went on to use the same formulas to make overt sex films in the early 80s, all under the pseudonym Al Bradley. I've not seen these later movies, but I can tell you that of the original trilogy, Star Odyssey is, stunningly, not the worst. The first outing, A Cosmos, War of the Planets, which is every bit as derivative and incoherent as Star Odyssey, also manages to be visually drab and lacks interesting characters. Star Odyssey has lots of problems, but monochromaticism and drab heroes are not among them. It should be noted here that the Cosmos trilogy is linked not by a common theme or ongoing story, but simply by the fact that a lot of the same costumes and sets are recycled through all three movies. That said, Star Odyssey is a dreadful movie. The dubbing is awful as always, but you don't get the sense, as you do with Sound of Horror, that subtitles would have helped. The attempts at humor are grating and childish, the special effects basically don't exist. The fight scenes are clumsy and rushed. I defy anyone to explain the costumes and sets, and throughout the movie feels like an indeterminate combination of cynical money-making ploy and interplanetary fever dream. It doesn't help that either the movie or the Mill Creek transfer is plagued with glaring editing problems that make the story, such as it is, difficult to follow. Take an early subplot involving Dirk Laramie's testosterone-charged exploits in a galactic casino, which incidentally seems to have been arranged in a factory lunchroom. Along with several other characters, Dirk has the ability to hypnotize subjects with the flash of his glowing eyes, an obvious riff off Obi-Wan and Darth Vader's power to similarly influence the weak-minded in Star Wars. Laramie rather unscrupulously uses his ability to cheat at poker, but because of an editing snafu or maybe a switch-up in reels as the movie was digitized, we first see Laramie confronted by the victims of his sham, leading to the first of Star Odyssey's several dozen Shatnerian fistfights. Then about 20 minutes later, we see the sham that leads to the confrontation, giving the impression his marks have simply forgotten of the fact that he's literally just gotten through bilking them. The movie also ends mid-sentence, which is a bit disconcerting.
Ladies and gentlemen, the
The fact that the trilogy here is basically a money-saving ploy rather than a single story the movie makers feel driven to tell says a lot about their intentions. But Star Odyssey holds a certain dubious fascination of the train wreck you can't turn away from variety. There's something about the look of the robots, Tilts and Tilly in particular, that makes it a little hard to believe what you're seeing. That said, Star Odyssey has a bit of quirky charm about it. The characters are so odd, the movies look so bright and kitschy, and its overall mood good-natured enough that it doesn't feel entirely like a calculated ploy to cash in on Star Wars. There's something, I don't know, cheerful about it. There's something, too, about the movie's cosmology, the idea that somewhere out there's a money-obsessed galactic elite who spends their time not benevolently enforcing universal peace, Day of the Earth style, for instance, but engaging in the same petty horse trading we do right here on Earth. This makes sense if the movie itself was just made to pull in a quick buck while there was hay to be made from the Star Wars phenomenon. By the way, as the next 30 years demonstrated, it turns out there wasn't really any big rush. But the idea is discouraging, but also intuitively right, that there's no cosmic reality that transcends the never-ending scramble for cash. You get the sense if Al Bradley had directed 2001: A Space Odyssey, we'd have learned at the end that the movie's mysterious monoliths were actually interplanetary slot machines.